I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome back to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. I am really excited about our next guest. I really enjoyed the first program, but I'm hoping that as we explore the next year, 2, 3, or 4 years, that we have access to real professional mental health professionals who can help navigate what we're going to go through, what we're going to witness as a people under constant assault by this administration, maybe by the President of the United States, and who knows, maybe even by the armed services themselves, if the Congress of the United States does not rein in the personal behavior of the President of the United States. It hit me the other day after the school shooting in Wisconsin that I needed to reach out to a personal friend, a medical doctor, a psychiatrist, someone who could help navigate our community through some of the difficult issues that we will be confronting over the course of our time together. How do we process mass shootings at schools? Some of us are growing numb to them. But to grow numb is to adjust and to accept that there is nothing that we can do to change it. How do we adjust to authoritarian leadership? Some of us, including the Senate of the United States and the Congress of the United States, they are mentally and psychologically adjusting to it. How do we resist bullies? And what are the consequences and the ramifications of that on our mental space? How do we center ourselves and separate ourselves from the trappings of all of the things that are going on around us? In a real sense, Monday through Saturday, we're in a world by ourselves until Sunday, where we ask our pastors, our imams, our rabbis to do something different, to lift our spirits and to help us in some way, shape, or form escape the reality that is our lives. We leave our burdens at the altar. We seek forgiveness. We try to overcome our shame, our blame, our guilt, our resentments, and our regrets. I asked Dr. Ndidi Onijiaki, a board-certified psychiatrist, got her doctorate degree in medicine from the University of Missouri at Kansas City, combined with a BA and an MD program. She endured further training at the Tulane University Triple Board Residency Program, where she specialized in pediatric medicine, general psychiatry, as well as child and adolescent psychiatry. She's an active member of the International Society for Sports Psychiatry, the American Psychiatric Association, the American Academy of Child and Adolescent Psychiatry, and the American Academic of Pediatrics. Additionally, she is fluent in Spanish and accepts English-speaking Spanish patients. Dr. O, welcome to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show.
Hi, good to be here. Thank you for having me. Good to see you.
I'm so grateful. I thought about you when I experienced the shooting. Our listeners heard the shooting at another school in Wisconsin, another student who was struggling with obviously a mental health crisis. It always starts or it ends up with a student who's got access to a gun and a mental health crisis. I'd like you to share with our listeners what is troubling our youth.
Well, I would suspect that what's troubling our youth are some of the same things that are troubling us. They are not. Kids are sharp, kids are smart. So what bothers us bothers them. And just like I've seen an uptick in grown-ups who have anxiety, depression, and their own symptoms, the same can be said for children. They're very aware. They're very aware.
And that consciousness, is there a way that we can signal or receive from students? Are they communicating with us in a way that they are troubled and that we should react maybe differently or respond differently?
So trauma and being troubled happens in stages. A lot of times there are smaller traumas before the big one that makes the news. Some signs that a young person is troubled could be isolation, regression to younger age behaviors, dissociation, separation anxiety, um, an increase in obsessive tendencies. There usually are some signs, but as a community, as older people, as adults, as teachers, and the grown-ups around, many of us ourselves don't even know what to look for in ourselves, let alone to look for in our children to know that there's something not right.
What are some of the things that we should be looking for in ourselves so that we can better help and assist our children?
One of the biggest factors or biggest clues to one's well-being is how they sleep. So many of us are awake at night, tossing and turning, thinking about tomorrow, thinking about the past. As adults, even those of us who aren't very aware and aren't very cognizant, looking at ourselves and how we take care of ourselves in the most basic ways, sleeping, ADLs, we call those activities of daily living, bathing, eating, grooming. Subtly, those tend to be the first signs to go. The first things to go and the first signs to show.
So there are signs that are sent to us that we may not be receiving, that someone is struggling, and it could be as basic as missing sleep.
Yes.
Mm, mm,
Yeah. I mean, none of this is 100%, but by and large, there are some things we could be looking out for sure.
mm. One of the challenges that we hear in the public school systems and in these shootings are that, one, the schools need to be secure, they need to be hardened. But over and over and over again, it doesn't matter if it's Columbine all the way to Wisconsin, it always ends up on the mental health crisis that some child is confronting. When we come forward, I want to talk more about what some of those patterns are in young people that are obvious, that maybe a clinician can see, that a parent can't see, that classmates can't see. And are there ways in which, or strategies of mindfulness, that we become less consumed about who we are, but focus on the behaviors of others, and then step in a way that intervenes in a helpful way for their lives to help alleviate some anxiety? I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580. When we come forward with Dr. Ndidi Onijiaki, we are going to explore some elements of the feelings and the sentiments of young and some old people. We'll be right back.
To bring you up to speed on the news of the day. You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. only on KBLA Talk 1580.
Somebody bring out the confetti, baby!
Starting Monday, January 6th, KBLA Talk 1580 has a new midday lineup.
I'm excited.
Are you ready for Tavis Smiley, Dr. Cornell West, Jesse Jackson Jr., D.L. Hughley, and E. Quarterly Corte back-to-back?
Oh my God.
Are you really ready for all this smoke?
I'm ready, brother.
Yes, we still have Dominique DePrima in the mornings and Zoe Williams in the evenings, but middays just got lit on KBLA Talk 1580.
We on fire.
All across America, people are talking about our new midday lineup. Starting Monday, January 6th, our KBLA 1580 app downloads are on fire because everybody's going to be tuning in.
Yes, I love you guys. You are the bomb.
Now would be a good time to hit up SMB at KBLA1580.com if you want folks to hear about your business or brand. That's SMB at KBLA1580.com. It's going up in 2025 on KBLA Talk 1580.
It's going up.
That's what I want.
Did you know that 1 in 6 African American men will be diagnosed with prostate cancer? This month, every time you purchase Gillette's family of products, they'll donate to support Movember. Whether you're looking for Gillette's Best Shave, a regimen to help prevent new shave irritation and bumps, or award-winning beard care products, every Gillette purchase can make a difference in the fight against prostate cancer. Visit pggoodeveryday.com/Movember for details. Exclusions apply.
I love spreading joy with gifts this time of year, but I try not to spread my budget too thin. Luckily, Kohl's has come through for me once again. I just went and used a 25% off coupon to score so many great gifts under $20, like cozy pajamas and fleece, amazing gift sets, and beauty must-haves. So if you're looking to give more for less this season, get to Kohl's. Select styles, offers end December 24th. Some exclusions apply. See store at Kohl's.com for details.
This is KBLA Talk 1580, home of the 2024 Climate Justice Campaign. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 reminds you, when we fight, we win. The Youth Justice Coalition is challenging America's addiction to incarceration and discrimination. YJC works to dismantle policies leading to mass incarceration, law enforcement violence, and the school-to-prison pipeline. Their approach, transformative justice, community intervention, free LA high school, legal defense, and system monitoring. YJC promotes safety without relying on prisons. Their goal, prevent system contact and help people exit the system through direct action, advocacy, and education. Want to get involved or need help? Call 323-235-4243. That's 323-235-4243. Join YJC in creating change. When we fight, we win. KBLA Talk 1580, your voice for justice. This is a community call to action from KBLA.
Welcome back to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. My very special guest is Dr. Ndidi Onijiaki. She is a psychiatrist who received her doctorate from medicine in the University of Missouri in Kansas City. And one of the things that I have come to discover is that there are not many African-American women psychiatrists in your field. And you obviously cover a range of patients from adolescents all the way to adults. Are there signs in the area of behaviors that we should be paying attention to? For example, if I were a teacher and I had a classroom full of students, what would I be looking for that would be signals to me of distress where I may need to engage a student differently?
Signs could be a student who's isolated or being bullied and picked on, who shows disinterest, who's losing weight. There are a lot of signs. I think the tougher part is when those obvious flags aren't there, and if the teacher's relationship with the student isn't very nuanced, some things can be missed. So we have the side of where it's obvious, and then also where it's not so obvious to detect when something might be wrong, so to speak.
Help our listeners with the not so obvious signs. You've named some of the obvious signs: weight loss, isolation, distancing, recipient of bullying, or maybe even a bully, but they're less obvious signs. Share with us.
So I like to say that every person has many parts, at least 6. So the body, the mind, the social network or social identity, the spirit, even the financial part of identity, and the cultural piece of identity. So with those 6 in mind, you might think, well, culturally speaking, this student is an outlier for whatever reason. Or gender speaking, this individual is an outlier, financial, and so forth. So looking at each person as dynamic can be a clue to where the risk lies, either the risk of overt victimization or less obvious provocation or desire to be seen and included, or hurt in some ways. I think when we think of trauma, we tend to imagine obvious strikes of violence and obvious strikes of threat to life or safety. But the truth is that more subtle experiences can be traumatic. So being on the outlier of any of those 6 that I listed can be experienced as at least hurtful and harmful, and victimizing, if not its own version of trauma, depending on the severity.
I have no idea of what the motivations were in the most recent shooting. First, traumatized initially by the idea that there's been another school shooting, and then we're waiting for the facts and the motives. Then I hear for the first time that it's a young lady who shot her teacher and is apparently the assailant in this particular case. It's a Christian school. And then I said to myself, well, this may not be the facts to this particular case, but I said to myself, self, what if this was a student who was struggling with gender identity in a Christian school that might be judgmental from a religious perspective, and how uncomfortable this student in their own struggle might be in such an environment? There could be signs that we can't see in these environments as well. Dr. O?
That's quite a scenario. And there's a couple of variables in it that make it a little tricky to encompass it all in a concise answer. But I will say that in the example you just gave, you hit on biological differences, psychological differences, social differences, potentially spiritual and religious differences, and cultural differences, all in that one scenario. So of course, if one is feeling judged, they're less likely to move with the group, feel aligned with the group, feel accountable to the group, and operate within it safely, for sure.
So if they're in a battle with their own sense of spirit, and then there are people externally challenging their spirit or condemning them for who they are, as the outlier, these are factors that could indeed create a troubling reaction, that over time can fester and become even more troubling. Is that, I'm not a medical doctor or physician, but I'm trying to imagine what it would mean to be in such an environment.
Professionally, speaking, anytime somebody is isolated, there's that risk. You could create a scenario where it is a school of a certain religion, but they're not representing the religion in the way that the person believes it should be represented. So then they rise up and want to, anything could be speculated within the purview of various stereotypes. However, any scenario where someone's being victimized and isolated or unseen is a spark and maybe the smoke for something bigger.
Are there techniques that teachers can use to help those students overcome their sense of belongingness or their sense of rejection in a way that is comforting, that is acceptable, that acknowledges their humanity and brings them into a community of understanding where they themselves feel safe? And I don't necessarily mean from the violence of an external force, but the perpetual badgering of the central nervous system by being picked on.
I am increasingly a strong supporter of mindfulness and grounding practices in schools. I think as a society and a culture, it would be wise for us to embrace the potential that being grounded and mindful has on a person's mind and on a person's body. And when I say grounding, from the biological and psychological perspective, I'm referencing basically a way to self-soothe and a way to stay present. Because by nature, our body and our mind is going to protect us from danger, or try to, 99% of the time. And that means that when uncomfortable things are going on, or negative things are going on, terrible things have happened, if we're not intentional, if a person's not intentional, they're more likely to remember whatever was threatening in order to survive. And that makes sense. which means that in order to not experience the world as disproportionately negative and disproportionately bad, even in moments where that may be the case, one of the best recourses we have is to be mindful and present so that we can take account of all of the moments that feel peaceful and without being intentional might seem boring, but are actually quite valuable. There's an example that I often use about, burning, a person burning themselves at the stove, for example. I can definitely myself think of the last time I did that, how it felt, how it hurt, there was a blister, so, and so forth and so forth. I could probably count the number of times that's happened this year if I really thought about it. On the other hand, I'm not nearly as cognizant or aware without being intentional of all the times I've operated in the kitchen and done what I needed to do without being harmed. And that's part of that survival mechanism that we have ingrained. But with mindfulness, even with a terrible injury, my mind might be able to stay more balanced and not decide that the house is a dangerous place, the kitchen is a dangerous place, this whole place is a dangerous place, and maintain my sense of wellness and sanity. Now, in schools, depending on the school, things have changed. So the level of activity that young people are getting is different than it was years ago. The level of ability to express is different. Some schools have more music classes and art classes and that type of involvement during the school day. But those are, there are studies that are clear that music helps and is experienced as a form of therapy, whether you're being intentional about it or not. And those are things that some teachers, depending on the environment, the class, and the age, could incorporate into the day, as well as singing, which controls the breath, and then controls breathing, breath practices as well.
Dr. Rowe, I didn't grow up with a cell phone. I didn't grow up with iPads and computers and all of these constant distractions. We actually had to enjoy our friends and enjoy people in our space. And it seems now that there's so many things competing with a young mind that it's very difficult to be present in the moment. And obviously being present matters not only to the individual, but to the people that are in that space. Are there mindful practices that bring us present in the moment?
Singing, I alluded to before, breathing, visualization, progressive muscle relaxation. And these, aside from singing, can be done, in the middle of class if one knew to do them. In the middle, as an adult, in the middle of a meeting, if one knew to do them without anybody being aware.
So if I see a student who is isolated and doesn't want to sing or be present in the moment, is that a source of concern for me that this behavior of continued isolation could lead to an outburst or to an episode or an event, or that young child is in some kind of struggle? Or because I'm the type A personality that might be Mr. or Miss Congeniality in an institution where I'm walking around the campus like I'm running for political office and I speak to everybody. I'm trying to get to what is it that brings the inner spirit energy out of someone who may feel isolated, and what must we do collectively, one, to identify them, but also number two, to help them come unto themselves in a way that makes them more social.
I mean, inclusion in whatever way you can, trick it up as a teacher who's governing that classroom. So whether that's breaking out into particular groups, or changing up the activities, or even having music in the background. The studies on that are still coming, but this is being looked into. To the first part you said about if someone doesn't want to participate in the activity, is that a sign that we might have an outburst? I would say the line isn't that straight. It's just information. For example, every cough isn't a pneumonia, but it is information to kind of keep awareness of. a cough, a fever, an ugly x-ray, that now we're talking pneumonia. So we need a little more information to draw that straight line, but it is something to consider. And a teacher's a great person to be trained to look, because they see students every day. And sometimes when we think about the hours collectively, more so than parents do in some cases.
I am extremely grateful that you're spending this time with us, and I'm certainly going to pray and hope that you feel so comfortable in our program that as we have these traumatic national events, that you can share with us how we can center ourselves, process what it is that we are experiencing, process our feelings, and better understand how we can make it through our day so that we can continue to share and help people who obviously cannot help themselves. And that might mean that we are in our own personal struggle at the exact same time. I am extremely grateful for your participation in this show. We have more when we come forward with Dr. Ndidi Onijiaki. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
You're riding with Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580.
I'm Amber Payton with 4 things you should know from BIN News. The Dow Jones fell over 1,000 points today. At the closing bell, the Dow lost 1,123 points to 42,326. This is the Dow's worst losing streak since 1974 when it went through an 11-day slide. Former Black D.C. drug kingpin Rayful Edmond, released from prison over the summer after serving over 30 years behind bars, has died. Edmond was given a life sentence in 1990 at the age of 24 after being convicted on drug charges and has been identified as the person who introduced crack cocaine to the district. The Federal Reserve is lowering interest rates for a 3rd time this year. It announced Wednesday it's cutting interest rates by 0.25 percentage point. And the Department of Justice is seeking feedback from Memphis residents on local police. This follows accusations of excessive force and racial discrimination against Memphis Police Department after Tyree Nichols' fatal beating in 2023. Get BIN News on demand 24/7 at BINnews.com.
In Irvine, on the 5 northbound, the drive is loading up away from Bake Parkway. It's a tough one ahead all the way to Euclid in Anaheim. The southbound side of the 5 slows in Anaheim from the 91 freeway. Delays all the way to the 55. More slowing ahead in Irvine from Bake Parkway as you continue ahead towards Lake Forest Drive. In Anaheim, 91 eastbound slows off of the 57 freeway all the way to Green River. In Corona, the 91 eastbound is slowing down at Lincoln. Delays all the way to Adams and Riverside. And the 15 southbound in Corona. Messy from the 91 all the way to Wyrick Road.
Only at Lowe's, MVP's Pro Rewards members can get a volume discount on eligible orders as low as $1,500. Discount on eligible product only and reflected in quote. Restrictions apply. See Pro Desk for details. MVP's Pro Rewards program subject to terms.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
A very alarming statistic is hanging over the USC football program. In the 3 years Lincoln Riley has been the head coach, he has brought in 12 of the nation's top 100 recruits. As of today, 9 of those 12 big-time players have transferred. The 9th player in this group to walk out the door is sophomore wide receiver kick returner Zachariah Branch, who made the freshman All-American team in 2023. Something is going on at USC, and this disturbing trend is falling directly on Riley's shoulders. This is new territory for USC to see some of its best players leaving the program. For decades, USC was the school kids around the country wanted to play for. If USC's brand is falling off, a lot of influential people will not be happy, especially the boosters who help finance the program. Riley has not led USC to the NCAA playoffs or a conference title. He needs to find a way to make USC Nation happy real soon. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson on KBLA Talk 1580.
Follow the leader. KBLA Talk 1580. Follow the leader. If you're not following KBLA Talk 1580 on all of our socials, then you're missing out. Download our app and find us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, and on the web at KBLA 1580.
That's right.
Again, you can find all of our socials at KBLA 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
By the way, if you miss any of our weekday shows in real time, you can always catch up by checking out the podcast of your favorite shows at your leisure. At KBLA Talk 1580, we've got your black.
Got your black.
Follow the leader.
Oh my God.
Follow the leader. Follow the leader. Follow the leader.
Have you heard of the 50-30-20 rule? This can help you spend and save your money wisely. So how does it work? Distribute your dollars into 3 buckets. 50% towards needs, 30% towards your wants, and 20% goes to savings. Use this tool to help your journey to financial success. Sponsored by JP Morgan Chase & Company.
Add confidence to every holiday adventure and get it done with a rugged and capable Chevy truck or SUV. Now during Red Tag, get 0% APR financing for 36 months on select Chevy models when you finance with GM Financial. Chevrolet, together, let's drive.
Offer available on all 2025 Equinox and 2024 Equinox EV, Blazer EV, and Silverado EV models. Monthly payment is $27.78 for every $1,000 you finance. Example down payment is 26.8%. You must finance with GM Financial. Some customers may not qualify. Not available with lease and some other offers. Take your retail delivery by 1/2/25.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 is committed to self-care and community well-being. Walk Good LA was formed in June 2020, inspired by the Black Lives Matter movement and the beginning stages of the COVID-19 pandemic. What began as a few minutes of breath work and yoga meditation before protests against police brutality turned into a safe space for the community to heal in hard times. The immensely positive response from the community transformed the momentum into a movement. Today, Walk Good LA is a Black and Brown-led community wellness organization based in Los Angeles. They provide spaces for healing through community yoga classes, guided meditations, hikes, run clubs, and other activations throughout Los Angeles that attract hundreds of members weekly. With the help of Propel and Michael B. Jordan, they now have a yoga and wellness studio in Los Angeles called the Walk Good Yard. To join their mailing list and connect with healing spaces, please visit walkgoodla.org. That's walkgoodla.org. Or find them on Instagram at walkgoodla. This is a community call to action, a community call to healing from KBLA.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. Welcome to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show on KBLA Talk 1580. I'm joined by renowned psychiatrist, Dr. Ndidi Onijiaki. We've been talking about young people and the struggle with their mental health. We've talked about some of the similarities between those of us who are older and some of the patterns and behaviors. I know, and I know she cannot share, that's patient doctor confidentiality, that she works with a number of athletes. And I wanted to know, what are the challenges, without mentioning any names or clients, what are the challenges in this health space, this mental health space that athletes confront?
I think, there's a lot. There's a lot. I will say that athletes by nature, by stereotype, are, motivated and want to do well and want to perform well. The public who's not in that same shared spotlight tends to forget how much pressure that requires and how much focus that requires and how much mindfulness that requires and groundedness that requires. So one thing that makes an athlete or a performer, actor, politician different is standing in that spotlight while it's all going on. An athlete is not aware, they may not be, but they have the news like we have. They have to perform and do their job despite hearing, tragic news and pretend to be unaffected, while basically kind of in terms of social media being bullied, along the way, a lot of the time. I think that's kind of one of the most common scenarios I encounter.
I'm watching right now I think we all are on social media, the most recent Heisman recipient, Travis Scott, I think his name is, and I think he played for Colorado under Deion, and his personal relationship is now fodder on social media everywhere. His relationship to his girlfriend, all of the details are coming out. She's defending herself. He's defending his fiance. They're going back and forth. And he hasn't even been drafted by an NFL team yet. And he's already in this judgmental space. And he's still expected to be, when recruited, the top performer, maybe in both directions, on a football field, and the role that we're playing in his space. I mean, it's just like at some point in time, I feel like Tim Waltz. I really want to say, mind your own damn business. Get out of their business. Let him perform. Let him do what he does. But it seems like there's a violation when we don't understand boundaries.
Boundaries are incredibly important. Again, especially when someone's spotlighted. When someone's in the spotlight, just like being on stage, everyone can see them and they can barely see, the front row. A person, perfect or imperfect, and really none of us are perfect. So it is a human being, and boundaries are the biggest thing we can maintain or allow someone else to maintain for themselves in order for them to keep their mind right.
For people who don't understand boundaries and have never set up boundaries, they give of themselves, but they've never really established this mental space called a boundary. Share with our listeners what boundaries are and why everyone should have boundaries.
Boundaries are doors. In our home, we have doors so that, I hope, most of the time, doors are at least partitioned so that we can do what we need to do privately when we need to do it. Doesn't mean we never come out, doesn't mean we don't share space with loved ones, and sometimes with people we don't like very much. But it is important to be able to close a door, take care of oneself, change clothes, clean oneself, and so forth without people seeing. And if on the side of being overly giving or intrusively giving, just like it would be inappropriate to barge in on somebody when they have a closed door, physically, it's equally problematic to invade someone's privacy mentally.
What can we expect during the holidays? This has got to be a busy season for you as a doctor. Some parents can't afford all of the things they want to buy for their children. They're in a certain space. Santa Claus isn't coming for some people who find themselves in an economic situation that is a certain space. And then there's loneliness in this space. There's no one under your mistletoe. Share with us the challenges of the holidays, and are we really out of sync with the spirit, if you will, of the occasion? The birth of Jesus of Nazareth really has nothing to do with toys and gifts and buying things. It has something to do with love, mercy, and forgiveness.
It's so interesting, as we've been talking this hour, it's occurred to me, it's challenging to discuss mental health and mental wellness with clear, decisive, straight connected dots when we exist within an imperfect world and a society that has its own symptoms. So it becomes unclear what is well and what is not well, right? That could be its own whole 2-hour talk right there. That being said, if we're talking about, textual, religious, or faith-based beliefs juxtaposed next to Santa Claus and Easter bunnies and, all that kind of thing, that in and of itself could be a discussion because there's the joy and the fun and the innocence of children, but then there's sort of some contradictions there, as you alluded to. Without facing those head on, it is a challenge. If we're talking about kids being disappointed for not having gifts, that is a challenge. But what can you really do? I think aside from what we talked about before, looking for the joy in the priceless ways, family time, playing games, maybe, kind of stylistically changing what the values are in the house and what the gifts are in a home could be something tried. But from a materialistic perspective, if we're having a materialistic holaday or materialistic celebration of a holiday and we don't have the materials, then we've sort of set ourselves up for whatever letdowns may come. What I see is loneliness. That's the biggest complaint loneliness. And for anyone who's lost a loved one, going through the holidays for the first time can be really difficult. The first Christmas, the first New Year's without a loved one is a pretty big challenge. And for adults who have had traumatic childhoods, whether or not they have children of their own, this time of year tends to be triggering for them as well.
I want to give two examples, and then we'll be coming up on the end of this particular segment. Kamala Harris had an extraordinary campaign. She was elevated to the pinnacle of her career, the pinnacle of her life, a pinnacle that many of us have never achieved. And then there was this loss and this disappointment. What are the range of emotions for her? I don't know these to be true or not, but I'm using her as an example. I don't know the range of emotions for Hunter Biden, having been alleviated through the pardon process of going to prison and the end of all the criminal proceedings against him. I have a sense of that. I know something about what it means to go through that process. But very quickly, before we go to our break, the height of one's existence, the mountaintop, and then the valley.
What emotions are associated there?
Yes.
I can't speak for anyone else professionally, or just, I could never speak specifically for anyone else. But of course, heartbreak, it's almost like common sense. You can imagine how somebody felt. I can't speak as, a woman of, deeply melanated, beautiful brown color, that some things are disappointing pills to swallow, but also not as surprising as they might be to someone else who doesn't share that.
We're coming up on the break. Hunter Biden. Ecstatic, right? Just dodged the biggest bullet of his life.
Yeah, I don't know Hunter, but I imagine, mixed feelings in a different way. I mean, what a juxtaposition, right? We're talking about Kamala Harris and Hunter Biden. What a juxtaposition in terms of demographics and life experiences and upbringing and so forth. However, I'm sure there's mixed feelings there too. And maybe that's his gift. He probably doesn't need anything else material this year.
Interesting. That's the argument I've been making for 77 million men and women who paid their debt to society. And they're waiting and praying and hoping that the president of the United States grants them the same new life that he just granted to his son. Do unto other sons and daughters as you've done unto your own. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. on the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show, KBLA Talk 1580. When we come forward, we'll be with Dr. Ndidi Onijiaki.
Bring you up to speed on the news of the day. You're listening to Jesse Jackson Jr. only on KBLA Talk 1580.
$5,000. That's the average amount of money people in the U.S. are now spending on gas in a year. $5,000. That's crazy. If you drive, you have to download Upside, the free app that gives you cash back every time you get gas. That's right. You can earn real cash back with Upside just by buying the gas you're already buying. You can literally start earning cash back today.
I use Upside every time I fill up, and I've already made around $200-$300.
You're putting gas in your car anyway. Why not get real cash back? If you like free money, download Upside.
I'm saving the cash I earn from using Upside to help pay for a vacation later this year.
Download the free Upside app now to earn cash back every time you buy gas. Use promo code SNAP to get an extra 35 cents per gallon on your first tank. You can cash out anytime right to your bank, PayPal, or a gift card for Amazon and other brands. Just download the free Upside app and use promo code SNAP for a 35 cents per gallon bonus on your first tank. That's code SNAP for a 35 cents per gallon bonus.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. LA County's new Justice Care and Opportunities Department, or JCOD, is here to support justice-involved individuals and their families. The JCOD Support Center is now taking calls at 1-833-LACJCOD. That's 1-833-522-5263. Available 7 days a week from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m., the Support Center is your one-stop shop for reentry issues and court support. They offer court reminders, connections to local services, transportation assistance for housing, court appearances, and childcare. The JCOD hotline provides personalized help to connect you with services that you need. And don't forget to check out justiceconnect.org for more information. Remember, it's free and available every day at 1-833-522-5263. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Linking social justice and climate justice all year long. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
The California Crusader newspaper would like to thank all of our subscribers for their support throughout the years, proudly serving the South Los Angeles and South Bay areas for more than 40 years. The California Crusader is a multicultural, Black-owned, adjudicated newspaper that focuses on providing newsworthy information to the people in our community. We're constantly looking for ways to assist businesses in our community to connect with our subscribers. We provide low-cost, effective ways to promote your business with our reasonable and affordable advertising rates. You can participate by suggesting, sharing, and submitting your stories on the California Crusader newspaper Community Share Facebook group page, or visit our website at cal-cruise-news.com. That's calcruisenews.com. Then click on the Submit Now button located on the top right corner of the homepage, or text CCN to 42828. Again, text CCN to 42828. The California Crusader newspaper, working together to build a better community.
I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580. Welcome back to the Jesse Jackson Jr. Show. We are joined with renowned psychiatrist, Dr. Ndidi Onijiaki. She handles adolescents, she handles adults, she works with professional athletes. She is a psychiatrist. Oftentimes when we go to church, or we go to the mosque, or we go to the synagogue, we ask our ministers to perform for us a psychiatric function. Someone who talks to us, someone who listens to us, someone who soothes us, someone who helps us understand who we are and work through some of the problems that we have, not only as individuals, but she has, amazing insights on patterns that exists within our community. And a lot of us don't get the help that we need. A lot of us can't afford psychiatric care. So I wanted Dr. Ndidi Onijiaki to be part of our program because of the breadth of African Americans and the African American experience that she has. What is the biggest mental health challenges confronting African Americans in the present and in the coming new year?
Well, I think the holidays themselves are challenging for many reasons. Thinking back to the aspects of self that I laid out before, the body, the mind, the social identity, spiritual identity, financial identity, and culture. And I think, and I observe that at baseline, oftentimes in this society, where we as a culture cohort, and of course not monolithic in any way, but where we do find commonality and comfort is not necessarily part of the mainstream. There have been some improvements, but overall, we're starting from a place of trying to find our way to each other and trying to normalize and mainstream what already to us feels normal. Even the way holidays are celebrated is not necessarily the way we came up with. So right there, it makes the transition out of a year into a new year something else. We do have some of our own holidays coming through for sure, but by and large, when we turn on the TV, what we're seeing, we're seeing certain holidays with a certain kind of guy. Santa Claus, we talked before about how maybe Santa Claus isn't even real. Sorry, kids, if you're listening. and all of that doesn't really honor some of our traditions that we've had generationally and culturally for decades and centuries.
The obvious challenge for some of us is, do we hang around and fight in 2025 in light of the election loss and in light of what we're hearing and watching on the news every day, or do we take flight, fight or flight? And I hear some folk trying to leave the country. I hear some folk trying to get to Canada before Trump gets sworn in. Some folk trying to go to Mexico. Mexicans coming this way. We heading that way. Other folks trying to go back to the motherland. They don't want to deal with 4 years of Donald Trump. Some folks are throwing their televisions out of their houses and getting entirely off of social media to reclaim some sense of themselves in the new year. Why don't resolutions at New Year's Eve work for Black folk? Why do we promise ourselves something at 12 o'clock on New Year's Eve or 12:31 on the 31st of December, and then get disappointed later in the year when the resolutions we made don't come to fruition?
Is that just a Black folk thing? I don't know.
Well, I don't know, but I'm Black, and I sure feel confined and isolated to my own mind on the resolutions that I promise myself I'm going to do, but they don't end. They don't even make it through the month of January.
Well, resolutions from the mental health and the mind health perspective come with change. If you're talking about a resolution, maybe you're talking about making change. If you're trying to make a change, that probably comes with mindfulness. Talking about mindfulness, that comes with groundedness. And some of us, many of us, are in what you just said a few minutes ago, fight or flight. That makes it kind of hard to invest in a change, to do things differently than is already being done.
I
So,
thought the stages that you just laid out were fascinating. You said first, we make a resolution, right? But right after the resolution comes paying attention to intention, which is mindfulness. And then after mindfulness, you said,
well, with mindfulness comes change, right? So you have a resolution that ties to change. The change ties to mindfulness. Mindfulness ties to groundedness. And to be grounded, that means to not be distracted and not in fight or flight.
yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot of steps not to be fight or flight. But that's interesting. That's the process by which a resolution goes from a resolution on New Year's Eve to actual groundedness. And that does require mindfulness. And with mindfulness comes change. And with change comes groundedness. Very necessary steps. And why your New Year's resolution doesn't work or why it fails is because after you make the resolution, you don't pay attention to intention. Therefore, you're not mindful. And when you are not mindful, you can't make the necessary actions and changes in order to accomplish the resolution, because once you do, you're grounded in the space for the resolution. Your word now becomes consistent with the deed of the change that you want. Be the change that you seek in your life. Is that right?
Absolutely. With intention and groundedness, the resolution can evolve into an actionable goal. Right. So a lot of us we can set a resolution to eat perfectly all year. The chances of that being achieved are very small because it's not achievable. It's not specific. It's too much. So when the person is intentional, they can actually say, "This is what I can do. I'll make sure that on the weekends, this is what I do, and I'm gonna do that for the next month, and then check back with myself." That's a little bit more palatable to chew and swallow.
African American women. We only have a few minutes left in this segment and in this show. African American women have their own challenges. Obviously, African American men have their own challenges, and you and I will deal with them on future shows. But for the last couple of minutes, share with us some of the challenges that African American women have that they should be reflective on going into the new year.
Women in general have a certain awareness of how we show up in spaces, whether it's overly apologetically, overly assertively, not apologetic enough, not assertive enough. There is this trying to fit into spaces that are oftentimes, men are in there, which, is what it is. But it's harder for men to recognize and empathize sometimes with it's hard for anybody to empathize and recognize what someone else is going through when they haven't walked that walk or talked that talk or lived in that space. So it happens when in a space where, a lot of spaces now are male dominated, unless they're specifically female spaces, tend to be male dominated. We've got to figure out how we fit in and, fit in just right. And, that's the thing. And then being color, being Black, the same is said in that regard in terms of ethnicity, race, and color. All three of those things like affect how we show up. So there's a stress there that is very real, which could be another discussion, a whole discussion, which is very real and even affects our childbearing and so on, specific and unique to African American women of the second generation or more in this country.
Is there anything that we could do to be better as men when it comes to our relationships with women who might be struggling in these spaces?
That's a hard one. And I'm not a man, so
Yeah.
I can say
some advice for the fellas.
Well, I'll try. I'm not, I don't see your perspective exactly, but I'll try. As a woman, it can be helpful to know that a man is listening without projecting. So I think a lot of times men like hear but don't listen without projecting, and that's hard because we're just designed differently. But it seems like, from what I hear all day long from women of all backgrounds, is that, how can I say it? Like he kind of like he didn't believe me. Like he really didn't understand whether they're talking about a brother, a father, or a spouse. He didn't get it. So sometimes men will assume, well, why didn't you just, for example? And that comes with, well, I couldn't because I'm not you. I don't have your strength. I don't have your size. I don't think like you. That's why I couldn't just.
Dr. O, we're going to welcome you back on our show in the not too distant future. I'm Jesse Jackson Jr. on KBLA Talk 1580. We've been joined by Dr. Ndidi Onijiaki. Grateful for your presence on our show. Until next time, everyone. Dr. O, thank you for being on the show. I think she's gone.
She's gone.
Oh, wow.
Thanks, everybody.
Hold on a minute. Gina, thank you. Angie, thank you. Andy, thank you.
Rob,
Rob, thank you. Orlando,